Hello, algebra. This little short clip here is just a refresher on factoring trinomials because we haven't been in school in a while, so who knows how much we remember, right, from like 3 weeks ago. So let's just talk about basics real quick. Remember, a trinomial is a polynomial that has 3 terms because of the tri, right? Tri stands for 3. So we are going to factor trinomials, okay? So remember, our goal is to pretty much, well, not pretty much, we are putting back in our parentheses, right? I want to find 2 binomials, so 2 things that have 2 terms that will multiply to a squared plus 11a plus 18. So remember, our first job is I have to figure out what times what is going to get me a squared, and that's going to go in our first 2 spots. We know that one is a times an a. That will give me that a squared. Okay, so now I'm looking at my signs. I have a plus and a plus sign, right? So then I know that would give me a plus and a plus here. And then the last part is I have to think of what are some ways to multiply to 18. So if we were to list them, I'd have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, or 3 and 6, right? So now we're trying to think, out of these 3 options here, which option will add to 11a? So if I look, that would be 2 and 9, right? 2 plus 9 gives me 11. 2 and 9. Now remember, the best part about factoring is that you can check to see if you're doing it right. So let's just do that quick just so we can remember, in case we do want to check ourselves later. We're just going to FOIL it out. So a times a would give me a squared. A times 9 would be 9a. 2 times a, 2a. And then 2 times 9 would give me 18. And then if we combined our like terms here, drop down my a squared. 9a plus 2a gives me 11a plus 18. And if we notice, that indeed is exactly what we started with. So we are golden. I just have a few examples just with the different signs. And then I do a couple harder ones at the end. So you can either fast forward through me if you remember how to do this, or just want to hang out with me and refresh how we did these in class. But if you remember, we were really good at them, so I think we'll be okay once you see one. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember how to do that. Okay, so let's start again. We're thinking what times what is going to give me an n squared, and we know that is n and n. Now I'm looking at my signs. I have a minus and a plus. So if I have to multiply to this positive, but add or subtract to a negative, I know I'm going to have a minus minus, because a minus times a minus is indeed a plus. Okay, so now from here we're thinking, what are some ways to multiply to 6? Well, that would be 1 and 6, or 2 and 3. Out of our 2 options to multiply to 6, which option will add or subtract to a, colors here, you guys, negative 5? Which one would add or subtract to a negative 5? Ooh, this one's kind of tricky because if I take 6 minus 1, I will get 5. However, I have 2 minus signs, so I know negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. This is kind of a tough one. I probably shouldn't have put this on here. That's okay. We can do hard things. But again, you could check it out and see if it works. Remember, we're really just focused more so on the 2, these guys right here. So negative 3 times n is negative 3n. N times negative 2. What's negative 3 plus negative 2? It is negative 5n. So we do check out. Then we always start with our 2 sets of parentheses here. So we're thinking what times what is going to give me this n squared. We know that is an n and an n. Now I got to think about my signs here. I want to multiply to a negative number. Well, we know the only way to multiply to a negative number would be addition and a subtraction sign, or a positive and a negative. And now we're thinking, what are some ways to multiply to 12? We have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. So now we want to subtract or add to a positive 4, or you're thinking which ones have a difference, or for which pairs of numbers are 4 away from each other? Well, not 11 and 12, but 2 and 6 are, right? What's 6 minus 2? 4. So I know I want my 6 to be the positive and my 2 to be negative. And again, if we check, what is 6 times n? 6n. N times negative 2 is negative 2. If I add my like terms, 6 minus 2n is indeed 4n. So we are good to go. Okay, and then our last potential sign combination would be a minus minus. We'll see what this one looks like. So again, put your 2 sets of parentheses. We're thinking n times n will give me an n squared. And now we gotta think of some ways, well, how am I gonna multiply to a negative right here? Well, again, we said the only way to have, to get to a negative number when you multiply is having a positive and a negative. And now we gotta brainstorm some ideas to get to 56. Oh boy, here we go. Let's just see, we have 1 and 56, 2 and 28, 3 doesn't work, 4 does work, 4 and 14, 5 doesn't work, 6 doesn't work, 7 does work, 7 times 8, 9, no, 10, no, 11, okay, we covered them all. Okay, so now we're thinking which ones would have a difference of 1, because I want them to add or subtract to a negative 1, so which 2 pairs of numbers, so which pair of numbers would have a difference of 1? Obviously not that one. 2 and 28 are 26 apart. 4 and 14 are 10 apart, but 7 and 8, aren't they 1 apart? So if I want them to add to a negative 1, I would want my 8, that's bigger, to be the positive 1. The negative 1, excuse me. There we are. So we're going to have 7n, negative 8n. If I add my like terms, 7n minus 8n is indeed negative 1n. Whew. Okay, so remember I kind of called these first ones our level 1 problems, right? There was no, our number out in front of our trinomial, the leading coefficient was a 1. Now these next ones are when we have a number greater than 1. So the process, if you remember right, the same, it's just, we're thinking now, what times what is going to give me a 3p squared? Well, luckily for us, there's only one way to multiply to 3, and that would be a 3p and a 1p. Now we're looking at our signs. I want to multiply to a negative number, so I know I'm going to have a plus and a minus. At this point, we don't really know where the plus or the minus go, so this is kind of where it's like that guess and check, like I said, or the educated guess and check. Why don't we just put the plus here for now and the minus, then we can adjust if we need to. And then also, luckily for us, there's only one way to multiply to a 5 and a 1, right? So now we just kind of have to be smart with where we put our 5 and 1 and see if it works out. So I want my 2 middle terms to eventually end up being negative 2p. So that's a pretty small number, right? So if I put my 5 in this spot here, I'm going to end up eventually taking 3p times 5. Well, 3 times 5 is 15. That's pretty big, right? So I don't really want to put my 5 there. I probably want to put my 5 in this spot and my 1 here. So let's see how this happens, okay? Or how this works out for us. If I take 5 times p, I get 5p. And if I take 3p times negative 1, it's negative 3p. If I add my like terms, what's 5p minus 3p? Well, it is 2p, a positive 2p. But I wanted a negative 2p. So what do we have to do? Do you remember? I hope you're thinking we need to switch our signs. So everything in our problem is right, except I have to put my negative sign here. Let's do that. 3p minus 5. And then my positive sign with my 1. So now when we check it, I'm going to have a negative 5p and a positive 3p. And then when I add those together, I do indeed get negative 2p. And we might as well try one more just for good luck, right? You never do too many examples when it's been a while. So again, let's put in our parentheses here. We want to multiply to a 5n squared. Again, we're kind of lucky because there's only one way to multiply to 5. It's that 5n times a 1n. What's nice for us is I have a positive, so I know I'm going to have a plus and a plus, so that's also good because we're not going to ever have to switch our signs because they're the same. And now we got to think of some ways to get to 12 because there's more than one. We have 1 and 12, 2 and 6, and 3 and 4. Okay, so far so good. Let's see here. We want to multiply, well, our two middle terms, we want them to eventually add to 19. So I'm thinking, we typically rarely use the 1 in the number like that, right? Because if I take like 5 times 12, I'm going to get 60. That's huge. So should we just try the 2 and 6? Why don't we start there and see what happens? So I'm going to put my 6 here, oops, my 2 here. We're going to have 2n and 30n. Well, 2 plus 30 is quite large. It's 32. It's still a pretty big number. What if we switched our 2 and our 6 around? Just to see, just might as well check it out. 6n, 10n, 16n. We're close, but we're not quite there, so I already eliminated this one. We might as well try the 3 and the 4. All right, let's see here. Where should we put our 3? Let's try 3 here, 4 there. Now I'm trying, I get 4n. 5 times 3 is 15. Oh, I think we got it, you guys. 4 plus 15 gives me 19n, which is indeed what we wanted. Good work if you made it this far in the video. You have a Delta Math assignment to practice this before we move on in our new content. So try your best and use the little tutorials that are on there, or watch this video, or email me. You can Zoom me. You can YouTube other videos. Look at your notes from our last chapter. There are so many options. We'll talk soon. See you later.